Well, my objective is spending some time in this table. It's the only slide I have. And see how it resonates with the audience. And as you can see, there are 3 temporalities or duration blocks, if maybe better to call it duration blocks. And the periodization, if you see the years at the top, they have conscious or deliberate mismatches. It's not a perfect match. Of course, there are huge simplifications, conscious schematizations, but we have to do them to begin from somewhere. So the Exodus, I will begin with Exodus. And I'm referring here to several movements around singular names. Those names sometimes were taken from places like Gezi Park, Tahrir Square, Syntagma Square. And sometimes they were taken from events, from happenings like the 15M, or like Occupy, or like Nuit Debout. Sometimes they were taken from hashtags, like in Mexico, the hashtag Yo soy 132, I am 132. And sometimes even from objects or accessories, like umbrellas or yellow vests. The important thing here is that in this moment, in this temporality called Exodus, none of these had a leading figure. You can't recognize a leading figure. The case of Brazil in 2013, when the demonstrations gathered millions, more than 400 cities, dozens of squares occupied, dozens of public houses occupied. No name came from the protests, none whatsoever. Neither a place, nor an event, punctual event, not an object, nothing. So in Brazil, they are called by the month as an eponym, the June. They are called the protests or the demonstrations of June. Like the 1848 demonstrations in France, the June journeys, that started the global spring there, the global people's spring in 1848. And Exodus is all about desertion, it's about subtraction, it's about getting away from forms of consensus fabricated in every sense, political representation, not only parties, but also labor representation, corporate media, consumer representation, from flags of parties, from ideologies, also from the left and right division, and so on. But when I put here Exodus, I'm referring to a concept from Antonio Negri, Ouvre, from the work of Antonio Negri, where Exodus, the main point when you say Exodus is not the subtraction, is not the negative moment, but the production and the organization capacity that happens, the affirmative dimension that happens in those situations. So, and it's not only a theme within the demonstrations or within the protests or the square occupations. This is something that is happening in the contemporary world of labor, of work. Many escapes and multiplication of spheres of individual and collective existence beyond the structured employment and so on. And when this exodus temporality happens, it gains an antagonistic dimension without losing the productive dimension. So even riots like the London riots in 2012, even riots and the cry "No Future," which reappeared, so to speak, this punk or post-punk cry, they have a relevant constructivist moment, a relevant constructivist component. In short, there was a bigger yes behind the no. And the objection, of course, was that without parties, without unions, without political bills, or even third sector organizations, what supports the protest in time and space? And then there was this hypothesis, pre-populist hypothesis, before the populist hypothesis, but that has something to do with the formulation and the put forth of the populist hypothesis. The hypothesis was, what supports the duration in time and space of the mobilizations is a network of collaborative singularities, a network of people working together from different networks that are creating, that are composing a new space, a new time for existing together. It's what Karl Marx, in a paper called, in a test not published, called Fragment on the Machines, refers as the general intellect, and Antonio Negri calls the common. Antonio Negri with Michael Hart call the common. And from then on, the tension would build new institutions, would make changes on the existing ones, would change the sense of the public discourse, and so on. It would be like a redemptive revolutionary process. Well, it went wrong, of course. I know it went completely wrong, but it's important to understand the populist moment. The question I would put is not if it's wrong, or if it's like a Beckettian wrong, like wrong right. In a Beckettian sense, we failed, but we couldn't have failed better. I don't know. This is an open question, okay? But of course, it failed. And if you go down here on the window is closed, just a moment. If you go down here in the perspectivist part of the scheme, how the traditional left saw it, how the neoliberal center saw it, how populist left saw it, how neocon right saw it, the common aspect of the perspective about this exit moment was the reading that was a negative moment. So the populist left saw it as destitution moment, the crisis of hegemony, organic crisis, in Gramscian terms. The traditional left, the hardcore realists, no, they saw it as anti-political. This is the negation of politics. It's an indeterminate negation. The neoliberal center saw it as anti-corruption. The problem is that we have to get rid of the corrupts, get rid of the inefficient process, and everything's going to be fine. It will fade away. And the neocon right, they saw it as a moral negativeness. Like, this is the dissolution of the values. This is we are losing every possible reference to distinguish what is right or wrong, what is man or woman, what is God and what is atheism, and so on. And those were the real pessimists. Those were the real pessimists. It's worth mentioning that eschatological themes already appear in this moment, linked to the coming of a savior. We need a savior to save ourselves from the Antichrist, and this mass is like the end of times. So this is the moment of negation. The second moment, the second temporality, which is the populist hypothesis, in a certain sense, is a response to the first one. And some understood that it was a great opportunity coming. The optimists, like the populist left. The populist left, they said, let's seize the moment. Let's seize the moment. This is the chance we were all waiting for. The void is good. The emptiness, the negation is good, because we will be the positive side of it. We will be the affirmation. The traditional left, they had a more realistic reading, be it or good or not, and said, well, we can't make anything of this. We can't function with this kind of protest because the protests are against us as well. It's against our formulas, it's against our ways of working, and it's just, we can't regenerate before this. This is beyond our possibilities. And then they tried every possible way to draw a line between the protests, between everything that came from Exodus and themselves, like a cordon sanitaire, like a clear division, they and we. And of course, working, stay with us, don't go there. It's impossible to do anything. The right will take them. It will be a takeover by the right. Last instance, objectively speaking, it's pro-financial capitalism, it's pro-neoliberalism, so it doesn't interest us. The neoliberal center, the ultra-realists, they said, no, this will fade away. This will back to normal as soon as possible. And the neocon right, they insisted, they organized, they started to grow, and they started saying, well, we have to be the last bastion of order. We have to be the defense of these threatened values, of these frightened people, they are not the people. The squares are not the people. The movements are not the people. They are just some minor elites, minorities that doesn't represent the hardworking national citizen. Who is the real people? And we are with the real people, the real worker, the real person who suffers from the crisis, who is without employment, without future. Those are not at the squares, those are not interested in these color revolutions, in these multicolor, colorful revolutions. No, they are like the gray people who lives in ugly houses with ugly lives, and we represent them. So we are behind, they are left behind by the protests themselves. So we will stay with who were left, what was left behind. And so they gathered all of those who were inside fear, with fears, anxieties, and feeling that something is dissolving everywhere and surrounding them. And so this was the answer from the neocon right. They are not the people. They are not the people. They are festive, gay revolutions. There is this connotation as well as color revolutions. We must never forget that. There is this connotation of gay revolutions. Happy, good vibes, elitized, like this construction, discourse of, this is very important. It happened in those times when the neoliberals said everything is going back to normal. The left populists were very optimistic. We were going to seize the moment. We will be all Podemos, we will be all Syriza or Cinque Stelle. And the traditional left was conservative. No, wait a moment. This is gonna end very badly. So what's my point here? And so I bring to frame the analysis, I bring for me, it's the most brilliant essay by Karl Marx, which is the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon Bonaparte. This is really an amazing political and analysis and class analysis. And I wrote a book in Portuguese about this. It's called The Brazilian 18th Brumaire in 2016. In a nutshell, because we don't have much time, in a nutshell, what is the Marx explanation for the restoration of the monarchy and the seizure of power by a braggart jester who was Napoleon's younger brother, Louis Napoleon? I'm talking in the 19th century. He took power in 1851, 3 years after the journeys of June of 1848. And for Marx is the party of order, the party of order. What is the party of order? The party of order is an ecumenical counter-revolutionary committee which brings together everyone already established. Every old political force already established in France came together in this party of order, which is a construction by Marx. And Republicans, Democrats, military, Orleanists, Bonapartists, monarchists, all of them united against the journalists of June, against the proletarians at the streets in 1848. So for Marx, the ascension of a political farce, of a ridiculous leader with a ridiculous rhetoric, has to do with the party of order. Then what happens? The protests were annihilated, were destroyed completely, but they continue to have effects in the conjuncture, in the form of its absence, like a dissipative cause. They disappeared, but as those protests, as those subjects were the true force of history in Marx, the struggles moves history, not the states. The struggles moves history. The states comes and capture this. But in Marx, the true force of history that opens history and moves it forward or moves it to the future, whatever it is, are the struggles, are the subjects that struggle. When you destroy this, the conjuncture starts to function over the emptiness, over the void. And so Marx explains that whatever happens after the repression of the June journeys in France, 1848, is it's like weak repetitions that copy forms from the past in an opaque way, but doesn't mean anything in concreteness. Even Napoleon, which it's a repetition of the great Napoleon Bonaparte. Like the younger brother of Napoleon is not the Napoleon which conquered Europe in the Napoleonic Wars, of course not. Even him is a weak repetition, a farcical repetition. The history repeats itself as a farce because the revolutionary subject, the struggles were destroyed. And what happens? Every step, this is the book by Marx, every attempt of the established political force to take the conjuncture for itself, to fill the void and be the rulers, first the Democrats, then the Republicans, then the Orleanists, and the military, every one of them fails tremendously because there was nothing to hold on, because the conjuncture, the void that was generated by the destruction of the journeys continues to, in the form of its absence, continues to make effects. And these effects, and those effects culminate in the ascension, the coup d'etat of Louis Bonaparte Napoleon, allied with the people. Marx doesn't use this term, but use the masses, the disaggregate masses, not proletarian yet, in the process of being proletarian. He makes an alliance with those and becomes the ruler without counting with the other political force that helped him in the first place to crush the June journey. So Bonapartism, according to Marx, is a regime in which the despot, the leader, I'm calling populist leader, not Marx, the leader acts in favor of the ruling class, but the ruling class has no political power to control or stop the leader, as he is allied with the deep country. The leader, the Louis Bonaparte, the farcical leader, is allied with the deep country and doesn't need the political class to support him. But he works for the political class anyway. But he has no checks and balance whatsoever. So the first point here in the second temporality would be, how much do Trump, Orbán, Le Pen, the daughter, Putin, or Bolsonaro have to do analogically with Louis Napoleon? I say a lot. Can the ruling classes get rid of Bolsonaro or Trump? It's still an open question. Even with the results of the elections, Biden won Trump, and probably Lula will beat Bolsonaro in the next October. But even if they win the elections, it's an open question. But what about Putin or Orbán? can the ruling classes do anything with them? That's, well, that's just, as I said, it's just the thickness of the problem. I leave it there. Continuing. When the populists left, second temporality, still the second temporality. When the populists left and the alternative right, it's not symmetrical at all. It's not that control left and alt right. No, no. Each one with its own projects, political projects, forms of organization, but still in the perception that it was a good moment to act, both the populist left and the alternative right were feeling that it was the time to act. So they boldly tried to seize the moment. Pablo Iglesias, maybe Pablo Iglesias is the person more conscious of this reading from the destituting moment to the constituent moment, from the cries of hegemony to the assault on the sky, trying to take the center of the board, dispute social majorities and win majoritarian elections. This is the level of optimism of Pablo Iglesias. And in fact, as a matter of fact, Syriza won majoritarian elections. Maybe it's the only case. So it's very, very important to discuss the Greece and the Syriza. Maybe it's where the wave broke, but it went very far away, and we now see the line of the water where it arrived, and then the reflux reflowed violently. But this line, maybe it's Syriza. And there is a criticism inside this left populism bet, which is the criticism of course, of horizontalism, of assemblyism, lack of electoral aspirations. The protests are reaching deadlocks everywhere. We need to do another step. We need to go to the political sphere. There is an autonomy of the political sphere. The antagonism must find a way to be a central antagonism in society. And so the Laclau readings enter this moment, the Chantal Mouffe, Ernesto Laclau's readings, but also Gramsci and so forth. Podemos, Syriza, Geringonça in Portugal, the Five Stars movement in Italy, but also the alt-right, Ciudadanos, similar reading, they do a similar reading. And they were quite aware of what they were doing. They were close readers of Laclau. They had an insider reading of the 15M movement protests. They were in the squares. They read the manifestos. They observed the streets. They participated in the assemblies. They read also the progressive cycle of South American governments, the pink tide in the 2000s, which they studied boots on the ground, the researchers there. It's a dangerous place to research social movements. It's not like researching them in Switzerland, to research them in Bolivia, for instance. And they were there doing research. And for them, the first moment, the student moment, opened a space. They did not occupy entirely space. They recognized themselves as one of its inhabitants, a part that is born from the populist hypothesis, develops this hypothesis, but is also willing to abandon and searching for others if necessary, as Podemos itself did. Pablo Iglesias wrote in 2016, the general elections, Spanish general elections, 2016, we are going to abandon the populist hypothesis. And the other leader of the party, the so-called new Gramsci, which is Inigo Herrero, writes that we have to institutionalize. We are outside the moment, the populist moment. We cannot win majoritarian elections. We must to be a regular party and do what we can where we arrived, where we came from. And so the discourse series there becomes discourse management. And the problems are very near the traditional parties problems. Should we appeal to the center? Should we appeal to the extreme? Should we focus the agenda? Or should we be generic? Various little problems of public relations, calibration. Well, it went wrong. The fact is that the populist moment, the second temporality, it went wrong. It failed. We can discuss again if it was wrong, or if it was wrong-right in a Beckettian sense. Again, we can discuss this. But it's indisputable. It failed as the terms that it put for itself to make a frontal assault on representation, it failed. The neocon, I'm moving to the neocon right now, the last one, the pessimists. Those are the real pessimists, not the traditional left, not the neoliberals. The neocon right, scatological pessimists, they took very seriously. They took very seriously the collective drive for order, and they presented themselves as the leaders of the party of order. They were order stricto sensu. They were national unity. They were true Christianity. They were clear gender roles, clear worker rights, clear worker, national white worker rights. It's not gonna pay for others. No taxation without representation. The Boston Party in the United States, 1776, and the Tea Party, the new movement. We represent the hardworking American against this cocaine drugged yuppie class of Wall Street. This attack on the financial capitalism that is kind of dislocated. You see, there is some anti-Semitism, there is this attack on the financial capitalism that goes too far and you don't feel comfortable with it. It's a Tea Party mood. If you recall, 2011, Tea Party one side, the Madison occupations in Wisconsin, which occupied the capital of Wisconsin, the state, but entirely different from the Trumpist occupation in 2021. But that is a kind of perversion of the discourse. So there's something here we have to discuss. It's not comfortable at all. In fact, we represent the people. They are not the people. We represent the POs, working, religious people, and we are against color revolutions. This is disorder, this is chaos, this is foreign powers, this is a hybrid war. We are already in a war. This war is everywhere, it's diffuse. It's a war that can hit you from everywhere, every time. It's a gray zone. The combat is happening in gray zones, and we are inside them. The cultural war is part of this war. The info war is part of this war. All of this was happening in the second temporality. And we were discussing other things. We're that discussion between horizontalists and the populists, the Negri-Laclau debate, the autonomy versus hegemony. There is a great paper I read at the time by Marina with another author. I was there as well. I was discussing this. I have an article in Italian. Negri, then I was close to him at the time, not anymore. And other things were happening very fast. So we came to the third temporality, the Harry Styles zeitgeist. I'll explain it. We have narrower and narrower horizons of action. We have lowered and lowered expectation. For some people in the movements, in the collectives, whatever you want to call it. Also, we could discuss what is a movement now. But as I said, my formative years were the outer globalization. I continue using the grammatic of the movements. Maybe it's completely wrong, right? But I don't find anything else to anchor what I want to say. So I continue to use it. For some collectives and movements, the expectations are so low that zero is good. If nothing changes, okay, we are entrenched. And maybe some of us are ready to accept some negative expectations as well, to avoid the catastrophe, to avoid the total dissolution of life conditions. We accept some negative, oh, no problem, I can live with that. There are worses than this. It's what Paolo Gerbaldo, the author of the most known book is The Flag, The Mask and the Flag, 2016, very important. In-depth analysis also on the ground of the protests and the cycles of the squares. He discusses the anarcho-populism. I don't understand why nobody even mentioned this category, which is sui generis. It's very interesting. It's a try. The anarcho-populism of Paulo Gerbal. Nobody speaks of that. Neither him in the new book, The Great Recoil. He doesn't mention. And I took recoil not from the book, not from the Zizek's book which is called, if I'm not mistaken, Absolute Recoil, which is yet another Zizekian book of Hegel, 2015. I'm taking recoil from this book of Paulo Gerbaldo, 2021, The Great Recoil. And for him, the pandemics and these lower expectations, these narrow horizons are driving us to a phase of introversion, of regression and introversion, backwards and inwards. In French, it would be repli sur soi. We are withdrawing into ourselves, would be a translation. So paraphrasing Mao Zedong, there is great disorder under the heavens, and the situation is terrible. Or paraphrasing Gramsci, the old is dying and the new cannot be born. No, the new has already died. And in its place, what was born was the Rosemary baby. So I think this music for me grasps this moment of how we are isolating from the world, how we are isolating from globalization. There is a deglobalization in course in every aspect, from the right to the left, policies, governments, books. There is a major deglobalization happening. We are isolating from the outside, even individually, if you think about it. And when we try to re-socialize, re-globalize, it's not the same as it was. And the music tone of Harry Styles is very laid back. He drinks from the 80s, retro crazy. I'm talking oldies like Fleetwood Mac and Aha. I mean, I'm no music critic, but for me, it expresses well this happy hysteria collective in which we are engulfed in the pandemic, and apparently we seem to be in it and trying to find some comfort in it. It's well tuned with the TikTok vibe, this torpor. There is this movie as well, this movie of 2021, Don't Look Up, directed by Adam McKay. The film is about an astronomical prediction in a few months of the impact of an asteroid that will lead to extinction of the mankind, the human life. It makes me wonder if there is indeed a nuclear war. Maybe it makes me wonder. It will probably unfold in that non-event atmosphere, as in the film. Like it's happening, the nuclear war, the missiles are going, and we continue. TikTok and Twitter, and it's like a non-event at all, and not anymore with that atmosphere from the Cold War. Paranoid, alarming. The movie would be The Day After of '83. No. We are in absolutely another existential atmosphere, so to speak. And when in February, it became clear that would be war, a European war. And this is an elephant we can't take from the room. It will come back at night, sooner than later. We are discussing populism of the left and of the right in Europe. It's a major topic, but there is an ongoing brutal invasion of an European country against another European country. This invasion that is happening, with all the war crimes, the massacres, the destruction of entire cities, they are being reduced to dust. The invasion is deeply pierced by this issue. this is something that I can't understand what's happening. Please elucidate me. I don't understand why this is not something that makes us rethink our mental map or concepts. What's going on? We talk a lot about the populism, but what about people's war? What about, there is a long war coming, long, very long. It's going to be like the Iran-Iraq war, like the Syrian war. It's going to be a long war, frictional, brutal, it's slow, it's grinding. And there is people's war going on. There is resistance with all kinds of popular support, material, moral, and it's going on, and it's continual. It's not gonna stop. Like the asteroid is gonna fall upon our heads. We don't know when, but it's gonna get very worse. It's very obvious. Everyone which are analyzed now, it's not gonna be a fast track here. This is gonna be very grinding, very ugly. It's going to continue. It's going to involve European countries. We are speaking in Europe. It's not a matter of racism. Like, we don't have to feel guilty to talk about a war that's happening against the poorest of the European countries, which were the Ukrainians. They are the poorest. They suffer. They are at the periphery of an empire. All the anti-colonial, post-colonial discourse applies to this situation. They are Cuba. And Russia now is the United States. Zelensky is Fidel, analogically thinking. If you apply all these framings of anti-colonial, so I really can't understand. So I will finish the third temporality here. I don't think it's time to entrench. I don't think it's time to move inwards and try to like start this mood of we have to start from within calmly. No, we have something that is shaking all of us, and all this discussion since the Maidan revolution, which is part of all of this, as the Arab Springs War, as the Syrian war has to do, the Libyan civil war, the Egyptian civil war, the Yemen civil war, it's all pierced profoundly by these subjects. And I couldn't leave this event. I'm sorry if I'm offending any sensibilities, but I had to bring this up. It's impossible for me to don't do it as a major topic. So I finish here and without any answers. But I think as a ketone, I even mentioned songs. I could mention also Afterglow from Ed Sheeran. It's good song as well. As a ketone, I leave it here for you to process or not, or it would be entirely blank. Thank you.